Speaking to reporters about the crash today, the president himself did a lot of swearing, which was weird when you're supposed to be like comforting the nation. He was swearing from the podium. He also rambled and ad-lib riffed on what the crash looked like to him and what it was like for him to watch the video of it. He scoffed at the idea that he would go pay his respects at the crash site, which after all is just minutes from where he lives. He said, quote, "You tell me, what's the site? The water? You want me to go swimming?" He also today, at length, blamed the plane crash on diversity. Diversity hiring. Literally, at the moment, bodies were still being pulled out of the frozen Potomac River. He was insisting that there must be something about this that can be blamed on non-white people having jobs. Right? Said it was just common sense. While we are on the subject of the unquestionably and unerringly excellent performance of white men in their job duties, though, did you see the press conference this morning from Trump's newly confirmed Secretary of Transportation? Here was the very end of that press conference. Here's how that one wrapped up.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there an acting FAA director?
And he just walks away. Question from the reporter there, you can hear it pretty clearly. Is there an acting FAA director? And you might think that there is an FAA director, right? Because there's this guy there at the press conference in the black jacket, the guy with the brush cut. When he turns around and walks away, you can see a big FAA printed on the back of his jacket. Despite appearances, though, that is not the FAA director. That is Trump's newly appointed, newly confirmed U.S. Secretary of Transportation, who also was plucked from the elite ranks at the tippy top of the meritocratic pyramid in this country, by which I mean he, too, was picked off of TV. Like Trump's defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, Trump's transportation secretary, Sean Duffy, also demonstrated his competence for this cabinet position by co-hosting a weekend show on Fox. Now, I don't want to sell him short. He was also on The Real World on MTV. So clearly, the best. This morning, while he was wearing an FAA jacket, he was also pointedly not answering that question about, is there an acting FAA director right now? Is there anyone who's directing the FAA right now? He did not answer that question. He just walked away. And that may be because as of this morning when that press conference was happening, as of last night when the crash happened too, there was no acting director of the FAA. The director of the Federal Aviation Administration, like the FBI director, like the IRS director, this is one of those jobs that's not supposed to turn over with each new president. FAA directors are appointed for 5-year terms, which means explicitly they're supposed to span multiple presidential terms. But that did not happen with this FAA director. This one left the job on Inauguration Day. And until this morning, Donald Trump hadn't gotten around to appointing anybody to replace him. Well, why did the FAA director leave on Inauguration Day? Less than 2 weeks ago, even though he had a whole bunch of years left in his term as FAA administrator. Why did he leave early? Why did he leave as Trump was being sworn in? Do you remember this? This feels like this was years ago, but it was only 2 weeks ago today. I don't know if they figured out a way to blame this on DEI, right? If somehow, somewhere, someone interfered with the inherent white male excellence of SpaceX in order to make this debacle happen. I don't know. What was this about? But somehow, Elon Musk's latest rocket ship crashed 2 weeks ago today. It was his huge Starship rocket. It went up a little bit, not far enough, caught fire, broke apart in midair, and showered the Earth with debris. Elon Musk was apparently excited by the crash. He described it as, woo, entertaining. Meanwhile, people in Turks and Caicos are dodging the debris. And the good people at the FAA, in response to Elon Musk's screw-up, they had to scramble to emergency divert dozens of commercial airliners, including from JetBlue and American and Delta. Spirit Airlines had a plane in the air that had to veer off course. Also, same was true for a FedEx cargo plane. Commercial flights as far away as South Africa and Australia had to be delayed or diverted as they had to put out these emergency warnings over a whole big swath of the Indian Ocean because of Elon Musk's mess. This happened 2 weeks ago today, the Thursday before Inauguration Day. The day after the crash, so the Friday before inauguration, the FAA, unsurprisingly, grounded SpaceX Starship program. You cannot try to fly this thing again until you figure out what went wrong here and you fix it. We cannot have anything like this happen again. You are grounded. That was the Friday before the inauguration. Then 3 days later, Inauguration Day, the head of the FAA administrator, was gone from his job. Elon Musk was rid of this FAA director who had grounded his rockets. Because what? An entertaining little crash? Which forced emergency diversions of dozens of passenger planes packed with humans? In September, while Elon Musk was busy spending the $250 million that he dumped into Donald Trump's campaign to make Donald Trump president again, Mr. Musk had posted a picture online of the head of the FAA and had demanded his resignation. He needs to resign. He had posted that because even before the FAA had to ground SpaceX altogether because of this most recent crash that Elon Musk thought was so awesome, even before that, the FAA had already issued a bunch of fines to SpaceX for ignoring safety rules and other requirements. Elon Musk had adopted this as sort of one of his personal causes. This was one of his crusades. Get rid of the FAA. Get rid of this guy at the FAA who's in the way of my SpaceX company. He's been personally demanding that this guy be gotten rid of. And so he got it. FAA chief was out on Inauguration Day. And then 10 days later, we had a horrific mid-air plane crash whereupon one of the cable news hosts Trump hired for his cabinet wore an FAA outfit to a press conference, which made people wonder if he was running the FAA, which made reporters ask, hey, who is running the FAA? To which there was no answer, which apparently prompted Donald Trump today at a press conference to, surprise, name a new head of the FAA for the first time because he'd never bothered to do it before. And yes, it is the FAA that is one of the agencies that will now be in charge of figuring out what went wrong in this devastating plane crash that killed dozens of Americans last night. But don't worry, Donald Trump says he has already figured out what happened. What happened here was diversity. And he's eliminating diversity. And so we can all feel safe, all our problems are all solved. Because yeah, look at all of the cable news hosts. The one guy's got the little jacket, and the other guy's blurting out information on service members who've been killed. The president himself says he thinks he might get wet if he visits the crash site because it's a river. So no, he's not going to do that because ick, wet. Just excellence through and through, right? Just look at these guys. Can't you see the excellence? I mean, at least Elon Musk is getting what he wants and what he needs from the U.S. government. Are we? That word oligarchy seems to stick at everybody's craw. It sounds like somewhere between like an ancient word and a foreign word. People don't like the word, but people who study how oligarchy works around the world would tell you that this is like a perfect case study, a textbook case. Man with tons of money effectively purchases politician. Politician then changes the government so it meets the personal and business needs of the rich guy to whom he belongs. That change in government is bad for everybody else. Like, for example, times like this, it might be good if we had an FAA. But even though what the politician is doing is bad for all of us, bad for everybody else in the whole country except for the rich guy, we're supposed to think we can't do anything about it. Because after all, it's this rich guy who's buying the elections now, and so our voice doesn't matter. That's what we're supposed to think, and that's how this is supposed to work. But in our country, it is not working out the way they hoped. Because the American people, broadly and deeply, say they dislike this eccentric right-wing billionaire who's getting his own personal government while the rest of us get the shaft. The American people, broadly and deeply, say they do not want our government leaders taking direction from billionaires. And the American people are pushing back pretty broadly and pretty deeply at what this new administration is trying to do. For the first time in 70 years of Gallup polling, there are more Americans who say they oppose the new president than support him, even this soon after his announcement.
Welcome to Backroom Brief. My name is Drew Pearson, where we discover into the forces shaping our society, politics, and future. Today, we're diving into President Donald Trump's latest gaffe. Rachel Maddow tells the story of how the former FAA administrator Michael Whitaker, fell afoul of Elon Musk and was driven from his position upon Donald Trump taking office. In a recent address, President Trump demonstrated an alarming lack of sensitivity and coherence while discussing a tragic plane crash. Instead of providing comfort and clarity, he resorted to swearing and odd remarks regarding the crash site, dismissing the notion of paying respects. Trump's comments veered into controversial territory as he attributed the crash to diversity in hiring practices, an assertion made while bodies were still being recovered from the Potomac River. The situation was further complicated by the absence of an acting FAA director during this crisis, as the prior director had vacated the position on Inauguration Day. This lack of leadership became evident during a subsequent press conference where the newly appointed Secretary of Transportation failed to address queries about FAA leadership. The discussion also touched on Elon Musk's SpaceX failures and the broader implications of government-business relations, particularly the influence of billionaires in politics. Public sentiment appears to be shifting against this oligarchic trend, with increasing discontent directed at the intertwining of government and affluent interest. President Trump's swearing and casual demeanor during a national tragedy raised eyebrows, reflecting a disconnect with the gravity of the situation. The president controversially blamed the plane crash on diversity in hiring practices, a statement made amidst an ongoing recovery effort. Elon Musk's SpaceX faced scrutiny after a rocket crash that not only led to operational setbacks, but also created chaos in air traffic management. The intertwining of billionaire interests with government decisions underscores a concerning trend of oligarchy influencing public policy. Inappropriate leadership communication. Trump's decision to use profanity while addressing the nation in the wake of a tragic event was not only unprofessional, but also indicative of a broader failure in crisis management. Leaders are expected to provide solace and guidance during such times, and Trump's behavior raised significant concerns about his ability to lead effectively during crises. The relationship between wealthy individuals like Musk and politicians raises questions about the integrity of democratic processes. As money increasingly influences political decisions, the potential for corruption and misalignment with public interest grows, prompting calls for reform and greater transparency in campaign financing and lobbying. The current crisis surrounding the FAA and its leadership highlights the urgent need for reform in how regulatory agencies are structured and operated. Ensuring stability and continuity in these roles is essential for maintaining public trust and safety, particularly in industries where oversight is critical to preventing disasters. Would love to hear your thoughts. What do you think was the most shocking part of this? Thank you for joining me today on Backroom. Please like and subscribe to the show so that we can bring more insightful shows. I'm your host, Drew Pearson,